Today on Energy Contact. Thousands of years ago in China, you only paid your doctor when you were well. Get sick, he's not doing his job, and the payment stopped. Here, we start paying only after we get sick. That's the paradox in the conventional Western medicine model. The doctor wants you to be well, but he makes his living off of sick people. Want to solve the puzzle? Well, convalesce right here, because it's coming up right now on Energy Contact.
I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping, and I'll keep my mind on better things. He ain't gonna worry, and I ain't gonna complain. I'm gonna drive away all these doubts I've been keeping, and I'll keep my mind on better things. Just keep my mind on.
Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series that I'm presenting as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness. It's about realizing your full potential. It's designed to present you a new way of looking at yourself and of looking at the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making energetic contact with yourself internally and with the world around you. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego. There's no difference between mass and energy. We love to separate these things out, to dissect and categorize, but there's absolutely no difference. And in fact, all that health and growth and self-improvement we're talking about take place when we do just the opposite, when we smush all those things together. When we make an energetic contact between the physical world and the unseen one. We're presenting on these programs a brand new paradigm that is thousands of years old. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move right ahead with that, and let's bring up our first slide. Everyone please know that I am not a doctor. This show is in no way a medical advice show. It's not even close. I don't give medical advice. I might call myself an energy healer or a chakra healer, so might you, but state, federal, and local governments absolutely do not. There's important information on this slide. We're going to leave it up there for a few minutes, and if you will, please read it thoroughly and with all awareness. And then, when you've got it down, if you will, take a moment to locate a pencil and paper. Here's why. At the end of this program, we're going to run some credits. And on those credits, there's going to be contact information for me. I invite and encourage you to contact me. I hope you will. But in order to contact me, you're going to need my contact information. In order to get that, you're going to need a pencil and paper. Now, there'll be plenty of time for that at the end of the show if your pencil and paper are handy. Alrighty, let's come back up here. Today's show is show number 41. If you're tuning in for the first time today, thank you. Thank you and welcome. I think you'll enjoy the show. These shows are sequential, so they do build. There's some ramp-up time, some up-to-speed time, some stuff that you might have missed out on. But I'm doing my very best to make each show as complete as possible on a standalone basis. And so we'll cover the important things again as need be. And if it is your first time or one of your first times joining me, and if what you see piques your interest, then I invite you to look for previous shows. They'll be airing later, either re-airing here on this channel or perhaps in the other cable areas where your friends might live. And if you look for them, I'll appreciate it. All right, and now it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce my co-host to you. We're going to get Slim on camera. This is Slim. Slim is here to help us understand some basic points. He's the brains of this outfit. This is a show about energy. And since we're investigating what energy contacts in the physical self, we need to know something about energy. But all that energy out there somewhere really does us no good. We need to understand what it contacts. Slim here is to help us understand that thing that the energy contacts. Remember, a body without energy is a corpse. And energy without a body, well, it might be a number of cool things, but none of them are human. All right, so previously on Energy Contact, we have been discussing the body intellect, haven't we? The body intellect and the anatomy that it builds. We've seen how the same materials in our brain that give us thought, recall, reason, memory, logic, intellect, all those things that we think of as brain functions, how they're in fact not confined to the brain at all, how they are in every cell of our body. We've seen then how that body intellect builds us, how thought creates anatomy in very real and very tangible ways. Here the past few shows, we've been looking at the history and the philosophy of how we think about ourselves, of our health care. We've been thinking about all the ways we take care of ourselves, or not. Thinking, in fact, about the way we think, and about the way we think about growth and being healthy. We've been comparing and contrasting two main healthcare perspectives, and we've seen that there are pluses and minuses to each system, and that we, not our doctors, need to be primarily responsible for our health care. And all along, we've been talking about that mystical energy that those old Indian mystics called Kundalini energy. Today, we're continuing to look at these models, these healthcare models, be they formal or informal, those things upon which our healthcare is based. Today we're going to do some more direct comparison between the two very different models of health and wellness that are around us today. Conventional medicine, otherwise known as Western medicine or allopathic medicine or standard medicine. That's the medicine that your doctor practices, the medicine that the FDA regulates, that your health plan covers. And then there's also alternative medicine, aka holistic medicine, complementary medicine, naturopathic medicine, the medicine of herbs and supplements, the things you find in your natural food stores. Today we're going to continue to cut through the fog and innuendo and see in real ways the comparative relative strengths and weaknesses of both models. And we will see that both of them have plenty to offer us. Now, you might want to use some of the information we present here today as background to help you make informed decisions about your health care. But I am presenting it all without a recommendation of any kind. All right, so much to do, but first, sit back for a moment, take that deep breath, close your eyes for a second, because now is the part of our show where we get to visualize. We're going to take our virtual field trip, our journey in our mind's eye. And today, we're going to get some exercise, and plenty of it. We're going to play a little game. We're going to run through an obstacle course. And the object of this game is to get through this very grueling obstacle course in a certain amount of time. You ready? All right, off we go. And as we take off, a weird phenomenon starts to appear on the scene. We get competitive. We start to compete with each other. And as we struggle through each of the obstacles, climbing over and under and around things, we have an eye on the obstacle, but we're also keeping an eye on each other to make sure that we're doing better than each other. All right, so there we are. Fast forward a little bit. Here we are now at the end of the course. And you complete it, and you look back, and you still see me a minute or two back. And you know what you think? For a minute you think, ha, I've beat you. I've won. Well, maybe you did beat me, but you didn't win, and you start to realize that because you forgot the object of the game. You didn't complete the course in time. The object of the game was not to beat me. The object of the game was to overcome obstacles in time. In fact, had we both kept our awareness and cooperated, we might have both won. But our provincial and limited minds got lost in that competition, and it kept us from realizing our full goal. Lucky for us, we get to take this knowledge and we'll get to go back through the obstacle course again. I bet you the next time we'll do a little better. Hold that thought. We have been looking at models this past few shows, the way we piece together information so that we can make new scientific discoveries. This is precisely the way that we built our healthcare systems. Every math and science student learns this following saying: all models are wrong. Some models are useful. So the models we build are not supposed to be accurate or concise or precise. As long as the model works, we'll keep using it. The fact that our medical model is all wrong neither surprises us or concerns us then. It's supposed to be wrong. The alternative models are all wrong too. There are good reasons, however, for the existence of everything. It's interesting that when I speak to an alternative audience, they get upset at me for saying that I'm a fan of standard Western medicine. And when I speak to more standard Western medical people, they get upset at me for proponing alternative modalities. But there really is no reason to be upset about anything. There's no reason to compete. There's plenty of room for everything. The object of the game is not to have a better system. The object is health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential, and letting everyone else realize theirs too. All right, so let's take a look at our models. Back in the day, thousands of years ago, like we were saying earlier, doctors in China, they were on retainer in a way. And I love this story. You only paid your doctor when you were healthy. And as long as you were healthy, he got a little something. You get sick, the payments stop, and they remain stopped until you're healthy again. So the doctor had an economic incentive, despite whatever his noble goals were, he had an economic incentive to keep you healthy, not to keep you prescribed. The doctor, in addition, got nothing for the medicines that he had to give you to get you well. It was coming out of his pocket. So his incentive was to get you on the fast track and get you well and get you off of the meds as quick as he possibly could. Isn't that a novel approach? Isn't that cool? Here, we pay our doctors primarily when we get sick. And the main profit in the industry, the doctor doesn't get it, but the main profit in the industry is in medications. So the economic motivation is to keep you on the maintenance drugs as long as possible. So you can see there's an inherent conflict of interests in that. The healing and economic model kick in only after you have symptoms and complaints. And when you do, you get a pill. Natural or alternative medicine is much more about the ounces of prevention than it is those pounds of cure. And in order to make it work, you have to have a healthy life. Those of you who have been on this planet long enough will recall that once upon a time, back in the day, words like wellness were not even used in our standard medical model. You didn't hear words like that. And there's a reason for that, because standard medicine, as we know it, really is not wellness care. It is not the science of understanding wellness. It's the science of understanding sickness. It's fair to say that Western medicine is sickness care. It's not health care. The doctor says to you, don't you worry, we're going to beat this thing. You and your doctor have a common enemy. And there's nothing really wrong with that. If you've got an enemy, it's nice to know that somebody's going to help you beat it. Okay, but modern times got involved with this, and as time changed, it confounded issues. Back in the 50s, our culture, the sort of the post-World War II affluence culture, made a great shift, and it made a shift into what some people call the convenience economy. TV dinners, disposable plates, fast food, use it once and throw it away. Not much later came along disposable diapers and disposable razors, all packed in tons of disposable packaging. That's when the give me a pill mentality started to blossom. If you went to the doctor, you wanted a pill, darn it. And you got upset with your doctor if you didn't get one. That led to this idea that we really didn't have to take care of ourselves anymore. We go to the doctor and let him take care of us. We treat ourselves like crap, and the doctor gives us a pill. So when did wellness care arrive on the scene? Well, it came around in the early 70s as a response to the scores of people who began turning away from this sort of monster of the 50s. All right, Why did they begin turning away? Well, we're going to look into that in detail. But in order to get to that, we have to keep in mind that this was the time in history that scientists began to discover these things called ligands and receptors, these molecules of spirit, the missing links between the molecular world and spirit and emotion, the physiological basis of those things. But in addition to that, there were other things going on. It was also the time that the healthcare model became more and more an economic model and less a healing model. Medicine had become less personal. And so the medical industry had to begin marketing. They had a product and a service just like anything else that needed to be marketed. So by market pressure, the medical industry had to take up words like wellness and healthy lifestyles. But these are still words outside of the commercials that you don't hear very much, at least not in an integrated fashion as a part of your health care. Other words like soul and spirit and consciousness, they're not in the lexicons at all. These are still words that scare your doctor to death. They see that as having nothing to do with your physical health. And so this new holistic model has come along, and it's created a paradigm shift, a schism of sorts. And it's produced some great changes and some great results in its own right, even within its renegade sort of gray market status. Just think of what it could do with a little bit of support. All right, hold on. Let's back up for just a moment. Just what is alternative medicine anyway? We should probably define that, huh? Well, it's a hard question to answer, and it's a very good question. It's hard to answer because in its strictest interpretation, it's everything not standard medicine. That's what alternatives mean. So granny's home cures get lumped into the same category with the crazy quack gizmos and machines. And that all gets lumped in together with things like homeopathy and Ayurveda, the ancient, very scientific healing method of old India, and traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, things like that. All of these things are very different from each other, very independent from each other, and they all get sort of thrown into the same bag. One of the reasons for that is, as different as they are, as chromatic as they do all have one thing in common. Whereas conventional medicine is based upon a principle of dualism and reductionism, all of these alternative modalities are based on monism and holism. We'll review these terms in a second. So even though it's very inaccurate and wrong to do it, in our vocabulary we basically boil down things, healthcare things, to two systems. Us and them, unfortunately. What the FDA and the medical monopoly likes, endorses, and promotes, and what they disapprove of. All right, let's look at these philosophical terms. We'll try to get through them very briefly. Reductionism and dualism are the foundation of Western medical science. Reductionism is basically the belief that to solve problems here in the big world, you abstract them, you solve them under the microscope, and then you bring them back out here. In other words, you solve by separating, by pulling a little out and seeing what happens in a vacuum. And dualism is that belief in inherent separation, that concept that mind is separate than body, and that spirit has nothing to do with body, that emotion is not physiology, that they're distinct and fundamentally separate things that will never have anything to do with each other. That's dualism and reductionism. Their opposites are monism and holism. Monism is the belief that there is only one thing, just one thing in general, and that the body, the mind, the spirit, the intellect, the ego are all the same thing, and that they're all the same as mass and energy. All basically different manifestations of the same thing. Like water, ice, and steam. They look different and they feel different and we experience them different, but they're the same thing. Holism, as in holistic medicine, is the philosophy that you can't treat anything in a vacuum, and that every part of you is integral and a part of every other part of you. There's really no such thing as a sick stomach, or a sore finger. There's only a sick or a sore you, and hopefully a healthy you. All right, so there's all sorts of words and vocabulary that we get into when we look at these things. Here's a couple more to compare and contrast. Chronic and acute. Acute basically means what's going on right now. In the medical sense, acute means traumas, bumps, emergencies, fevers, sudden onsets. Chronic means the things that happen over time, like the effects of a lifetime of smoking, of eating lousy food, working in an asbestos plant, living underneath a power transformer, things like that. As a rule of thumb, standard Western medicine is far, far better at acute medicine, but alternative modalities do very well at the chronic business, at promoting the healthy lifestyles that lead to long, healthy, happy lives. The goods and the bads of life over time. The less you lead a holistic lifestyle, the greater the chance that you're going to sign up for the lifetime prescription to maintenance drugs, to maintenance prescriptions. The maintenance drug, I humbly submit to you, is Western medicine's feeble attempt to dabble in chronic medicine, in the purview where alternative things do better. And although it is a feeble attempt indeed many times, that's where the money is. All right, so Western medicine is great. If you are in a car wreck, my goodness, you want Western conventional medicine. Go to an emergency room. If your appendix is about to burst, if there's a bubonic plague arising on the scene, if polio is breaking out, if you are in dire pain, you might want a surgery, a vaccination. You might need a pain reliever. It's all good, and alternative modalities don't do nearly as well at those sorts of things. Remember that before the arrival of standard medicine as we know it, our life expectancy was about 40 years old. Now it's more than double of that. Well, a lot of those early deaths back in the day were due to those acute things, those accidents and traumas and the complications that came from them in the absence of a good plan of emergency medicine. All right, but healthcare, the model has become an industry. It's become an economic model more than a healthcare model, grossing over $1.6 trillion dollars a year, and employing 1 out of every 9 people in the United States. And while elementary medicine tells us that medicine's first job is to make people well, elementary economics tells us that medicine's first job is to make money. We know the industry is succeeding at its second goal. We can see the annual reports, but perhaps sometimes even at the expense of the first. And by the way, the money, remember the money is in the maintenance drugs, in the chronic management. That is drugs you take forever. They're not cures. They're symptom relievers. They're keeping the symptoms at bay things. Now, a few years ago, you might recall there's this fellow that made this movie about fast food, and he called it Super Size Me. Well, I contend that somebody could make an equally or more hard-hitting movie today, and he could call it Medicate Me. Western medicine, though, it has improved the quality of our lives. And in doing so, and in helping us, it kills about 100,000 people a year. When you combine all the statistics, that sounds shocking. But when you look at all the people it saves and all the people it helps, really, that's not an alarming statistic. It's not alarming unless you happen to be one of those 100,000. But what is outrageous is the sanctimony of the industry that does that. And far more deaths are caused by prescription drugs than natural herbs. And yet we're expected to look down our nose at alternative anything. So, despite all of its advantages, and I think we've pointed some out pretty plainly, standard medicine is sort of driving people away. The market has begun to look for alternatives against all advice, and they've gone to this quasi-illegal world of natural cures. In fact, today, many of Granny's home remedies are contraband. Well, it's more the economic machine than the counsel of good doctors. Let's go back a few less years. Let's go back to the early 20th century. If you go back to the days that you see in the 30s movies, Remember that doctor? He was a family friend. He got to know you. He came to your house. He gave advice. He sat at the bedside next to the kids. That's where the term bedside manner came from. We don't use bedside manner in our vocabulary today. There's not much of it around. It's a term that's all but lost. But that doctor, in fact, knew all of those old cures that Granny knew. He understood them well, and he used them. And he saved the prescribing the drugs and the surgeries as a last result, going to chemistry after more natural things had failed. But wait a minute. That kindly old doctor from a century ago was using Descartes' model as well, wasn't he? Isn't that Descartes' model that I've been talking about? Well, sure it is. It's the times and the economics that have changed. So the model has been applied differently these days, and the results are different. That's what makes it obsolete. Nowadays, the doctor is no longer empowered to be that confidential family friend. Every year or so, you'll see a news story about a doctor who gets involved in integrative medicine. Integrative medicine is great. That's the practice of doing exactly what I'm talking about, taking the best of both worlds. The problem is when you read that story, normally you read it in the context of that fellow getting shut down by the FDA. And now all of his alternative things are confiscated and he's in jail, and that confidential client relationship, all those records are confiscated and now they're public domain. So today's medical industry is much different than it was a century ago, isn't it? It's a new medicine, born of malpractice suits, of economics, of market forces, and of the mechanization of the human body. Now, aware and conscious doctors, they're more at the mercy of this machine than you are. Why are they more? Because you have options, and they really don't. And so, the problem with the competition is that, as was in the case in our obstacle course story, that the competition mentality has made everyone a loser. Since it's against the law to put labels on those alternative herbs, go to that alternative store and look at those herbs and supplements. You can't find what they're for or how to use them. So people don't know, and sometimes they misuse them. It's a sad thing. The object of the game is health and growth and happiness and self-improvement. But this competition has caused the game to be over. The game is over and nobody's won. But there's good news. The good news is now you know, and so you get to go over the obstacle course again. You get to go over the obstacle course again because you're aware of the goal. Now you can achieve both worlds. The problem is that nobody's going to tell you how. The economic model is not going to lead you. And so in order to do that, you're just going to have to consider and make energy contact. And that's all the time we have for today. I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in energy contact.
Just keep my mind on better things.